Can we really hack the brain? Imagine this: a student pulls an all-nighter cramming for an exam, armed with coffee and highlighters, convinced that pure willpower will make the knowledge stick. Yet studies reveal that sleep deprivation reduces memory retention by nearly 40%. This raises a powerful question: are we using our brains the wrong way? As John Medina, author of Brain Rules, wisely notes, if workplaces had nap rooms, multitasking was banned, and meetings were held during walks, productivity would soar. Science has long shown us that the brain is not fixed, it's adaptable, resilient, and full of untapped potential. The ancient philosopher Aristotle declared, "The energy of the mind is the essence of life." Modern neuroscience proves him right. Your habits, environment, and choices literally shape how your brain wires itself. In Brain Rules, Medina distills decades of research into practical insights on memory improvement, learning optimization, and boosting cognitive performance. So how does this play out in real life? Picture an amputee who feels the ghost of his missing limb, yet by simply looking into a mirror, he retrains his brain to let go of the pain. Or think of the Russian journalist who memorized random numbers for 15 years straight, proving that the brain's neuroplasticity can stretch further than we ever imagined. And on a more relatable note, ever pulled an all-nighter only to blank out during a test? Medina's rule is simple: sleep is not a luxury, it's brain fuel. But here's the real question: if you could unlock these rules, how would it change your life? Would you use exercise not just for fitness but as a brain enhancer? Would you treat sleep as your superpower instead of a guilty indulgence? Would you study with all your senses, sight, sound, and touch, knowing that's the fastest path to true learning? Brain Rules doesn't just tell you what the brain needs, it shows you how to harness it in ways that make daily living sharper, more efficient, and deeply fulfilling. The message is clear: your brain is your greatest asset, nurture it, and it will reward you with clarity, resilience, and brilliance. If you're ready to discover how to live, learn, and perform at your best, dive into Brain Rules. Embrace the science, apply the wisdom, and let your mind show you just how powerful it truly is. About the author. John Medina is a renowned molecular biologist, professor, and research consultant with a passion for uncovering how the brain works. He is the founder of both the Brain Center for Applied Learning Research and the Delars Research Institute, organizations dedicated to advancing our understanding of learning, development, and human potential. Key Takeaway 1: Brain Rules: How Exercise Transforms Your Mind and Body. John Medina Book Summary. Imagine waking up as a Homo sapiens 100,000 years ago. Before the sun had fully risen, you'd already be walking, running, and hunting, covering an astonishing 10 to 20 kilometers daily. Scientists now know this constant movement shaped not only our bodies but also our brains, wiring them for sharpness, adaptability, and endurance. As John Medina writes in Brain Rules, our ancestors didn't sit still, and neither should our brains. This fact alone reshapes how we think about exercise, not as optional, but as fundamental to how the human brain was designed to function. Throughout history, great thinkers have recognized the profound link between the body and the mind. The ancient Greeks believed in a sound mind and a sound body, while modern neuroscience echoes the same truth: movement fuels intelligence. Medina, a molecular biologist and founder of the Brain Center for Applied Learning Research, explains how physical activity directly enhances brain performance. He shows us that exercise is more than fitness, it's the very foundation of brain health and cognitive vitality. Think of your blood vessels as your body's roads. In the 1800s, an English engineer revolutionized trade by paving dirt paths with gravel, allowing goods to move faster and more efficiently. Similarly, when you exercise, you improve the roads inside your body. Blood flow increases, carrying oxygen, vitamins, and minerals with greater ease, while waste is removed more effectively. Just as smoother roads open access to new opportunities for communities, exercise opens pathways in your brain, making your thinking sharper and more reliable. If exercise can physically remodel your brain's internal highways, what does that mean for your creativity, problem-solving, and emotional resilience? Could skipping daily movement be silently robbing you of your greatest mental potential? Studies show that exercise stimulates BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a growth hormone often described as miracle-grow for the brain. It strengthens neurons, builds new connections, and even sparks the birth of new brain cells. So ask yourself, are you feeding your brain what it truly needs to thrive? The message is clear: the more you move, the smarter, stronger, and more resilient you become. Exercise isn't just about physical fitness, it's about unlocking the full potential of your mind. As we move into the next chapter of Brain Rules, we'll uncover another often overlooked factor that can revolutionize your cognitive performance: the power of sleep. So stay with me on this journey, because the key to a sharper, healthier brain may be just one good night's rest away. Key Takeaway 2. Brain Rules: Why Sleep Supercharges Your Mind, John Medina. From an evolutionary standpoint, sleep is puzzling, maybe even dangerous. Imagine lying unconscious for hours, vulnerable to predators, in the wild. Why would humans take such a risk every single day unless it was essential? The truth is staggering: sleep isn't optional, it's survival. As John Medina explains in Brain Rules, sleep is the brain's ultimate reset button, repairing the body, consolidating memories, and sharpening the mind. Without it, the brain simply cannot perform at its best. Science consistently confirms what ancient wisdom hinted at: rest is power. A groundbreaking military study showed that soldiers who lost just one night of sleep suffered a 30% drop in cognitive ability, while 2 sleepless nights slashed performance by nearly 60%. Another study revealed that just 5 nights of 6 hours or less left participants functioning as poorly as someone awake for 48 continuous hours. As Aristotle once said, sleep is the natural healing of the senses. Medina builds on this truth by showing that sleep fuels not just health, but intelligence itself. Think of your brain like a smartphone. Each day, your apps, work, stress, learning, emotions, drain the battery. Sleep is your nightly charger, restoring power and clearing junk files. Skip it, and your system crashes, memory falters, focus dims, and creativity suffers. Just as a phone running on 5% battery struggles to perform, a sleep-deprived brain struggles to think. By honoring your body's need for rest, you're essentially giving your mind the full recharge it demands to function at peak performance. If sleep is so critical, why do we so often sacrifice it for productivity, late-night scrolling, or endless deadlines? Could our obsession with hustle culture be silently sabotaging our most valuable asset, the brain itself? Research shows that every person has a unique internal clock. Some of us are early rising larks, some are late-night owls, and most are flexible hummingbirds who shift between the two. Instead of fighting your natural rhythm, what if the key to sharper thinking and stronger health is to align with it? The message is simple yet profound: protect your sleep, and you protect your brain. Just as exercise strengthens your body and sharpens your mind, sleep recharges your energy and unlocks your deepest mental potential. As we step into the next chapter of Brain Rules, we'll explore how stress impacts the brain, and why mastering it is just as vital as sleep and movement for long-term resilience. Stay with me, because understanding this next rule could transform the way you handle pressure, challenges, and success itself. Key Takeaway 3. Brain Rules: How Stress Hijacks Your Mind, John Medina. Picture this: you're rushing through traffic, late for a critical meeting, your heart racing and palms sweaty. That pounding heartbeat? That's your fight-or-flight response, a survival mechanism honed over millennia. In the short term, stress sharpens your instincts and keeps you safe. But when stress becomes constant, when your body feels under attack every day, the very tool meant to protect you begins to destroy your mental clarity, memory, and even health. Psychologist Martin Seligman uncovered this harsh reality in the 1960s with his famous experiments on dogs, where prolonged shocks created a state of learned helplessness. At first, the dogs fought back. But over time, they stopped trying, even when escape was possible. This mirrors what happens in humans. Under chronic stress, the brain stops adapting, learning, and problem-solving. As John Medina notes in Brain Rules, stressed minds lose efficiency in math, language, memory, and self-control. As Hans Selye once said, "It's not stress that kills us, it is our reaction to it." Think of stress like fire. A controlled flame warms your home, cooks your food, and fuels progress. But let it burn out of control, and it destroys everything in its path. Short bursts of stress push us to act, like deadlines nudging us to finish a project. But when stress smolders endlessly, it hijacks the brain, flooding it with cortisol that short-circuits memory, creativity, and focus. Just like a computer overheating under too many tasks, a stressed brain eventually shuts down its higher functions. If stress in moderation sharpens us, why do so many of us let it dominate our lives unchecked? Could it be that we've normalized constant pressure, emails, deadlines, financial worries, mistaking it for productivity? What if the very culture of always-on hustle is silently teaching us helplessness? Imagine how much smarter, calmer, and more effective we'd be if we treated stress as a signal, not a lifestyle. The lesson is clear: a little stress is fuel. But chronic stress is poison. Protecting your brain means learning when to fight, when to rest, and when to let go. As Medina shows, managing stress isn't about eliminating it, it's about training your mind to respond, not collapse. In the next Brain Rules Insight, we'll see how memory works, and how to strengthen it so your brain becomes not just stress resilient, but unstoppable in its learning power. Stay tuned, because the best way to master your brain is to truly understand how it remembers. Key Takeaway 4. Brain Rules, the science of attention and focus. Right now, as you watch this, your brain is bombarded with millions of signals every second, from the hum of your environment to the sensation of your feet on the floor. And yet, you weren't paying attention to your feet until I mentioned it. That's the incredible power of your brain's filter. It decides what matters and what fades into the background. Without this selective focus, we drown in a sea of endless distractions. Neuroscience shows that the brain doesn't simply record reality, it curates it. Emotions play a major role in deciding what grabs your focus and what gets ignored. As John Medina explains in Brain Rules, our ancestors survived not by noticing everything, but by focusing only on what mattered most: threats, opportunities, patterns. Imagine if they stopped to admire every leaf while a predator was lurking nearby. Attention, quite literally, meant survival. Think of your attention like a spotlight on a stage. The spotlight can shine brightly on only one actor at a time, while the rest of the cast waits in the shadows. Similarly, your brain highlights key details while leaving everything else behind. And when you give information structure, like grouping words into categories, your brain remembers 40% better. It's the same reason we recall song lyrics more easily than a random shopping list. The brain thrives on meaning, not clutter. But here's the challenge. In a world overflowing with notifications, ads, and distractions, how much of your attention is truly under your control? Do you own your focus, or do you let your phone, emails, and noise hijack it? What would happen if, instead of scattering your attention, you directed it deliberately toward the things that actually move your life forward? The rule is simple: what you focus on, grows. Train your brain to filter out the noise and lean into meaning. Whether you're studying, working, or giving a presentation, keep it structured, emotionally engaging, and under 10 minutes to maximize attention. As Medina puts it, the brain doesn't pay attention to boring things. So, don't let your attention drift into the meaningless. Choose wisely what deserves your spotlight. Because the quality of your focus determines the quality of your life. Key Takeaway 5. Brain Rules, why Michael Jordan failed at baseball, neuroplasticity explained. In 1994, Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time, did something shocking. At the peak of his career, he walked away from the NBA to chase a childhood dream: professional baseball. The world expected him to dominate. But instead, Jordan struggled and failed miserably. How could someone so gifted in one sport fall short in another? The answer lies in one of the brain's most powerful truths: we succeed where our brains are wired to excel. Neuroscientists have proven that every experience we have reshapes the very structure of our brain. One famous experiment showed a man pictures of celebrities while mapping his neurons. Each time he looked at Jennifer Aniston, the same single neuron fired, nicknamed the Jennifer Aniston neuron. It didn't activate for 80 other images, only hers. The takeaway? The brain physically rewires itself in response to repeated exposure and learning, not because we're born with special circuits. Think of your brain like a trail in the forest. Every time you walk the same path, it becomes clearer, wider, easier to navigate. Jordan had spent decades carving trails for basketball, his brain and muscles deeply wired for the rhythm of the court. But baseball? That was like hacking through an untouched jungle. No matter how athletic he was, the neural pathways simply weren't there. So here's the question: if even Michael Jordan couldn't dominate outside his field of expertise, why do we expect every child, or every adult, to learn in the same way, on the same timeline? About 10% of kids, for example, aren't wired for reading by age 6. Yet schools often push uniform standards, ignoring how differently each brain develops. What if instead of forcing everyone into the same mold, we embrace the unique wiring of each mind? The lesson is clear: lean into your wiring. Success doesn't come from being good at everything, it comes from focusing on where your brain has already built strong pathways, while patiently rewiring new ones over time. Whether you're learning a skill, raising a child, or chasing your next big goal, remember that the brain is constantly adapting, but it thrives when passion and practice meet. Just like Jordan's story teaches us, the key to mastery is not talent alone, but the trails we choose to walk, over and over again. Key takeaway 6. Brain rules, how to remember anything, the power of spaced repetition. Imagine being able to recall a random formula of 30 letters and numbers. Not just minutes later, but 15 years later. This was the remarkable gift, and curse, of Solomon Cherysshevsky, a Russian journalist born in 1886. His memory was so powerful that he never forgot anything he saw or heard. But here's the twist, though he could recall every detail, he couldn't organize those details into meaningful patterns. He could read a book word for word, yet fail to understand what the story meant. His story reveals a truth about memory: recall without meaning is almost useless. Psychologists have long studied this phenomenon. In the 19th century, German researcher Hermann Ebbinghaus discovered the forgetting curve. His findings were shocking: students typically forget 90% of what they learn within 30 days. Yet he also found the antidote: spaced repetition. By reviewing information at timed intervals, say every 10 minutes, then every few hours, then every few days, our brains interpret the material as meaningful, worth holding on to. This is how long-term memory is built. Think of your brain as a library. If you put a book on the shelf once and never touch it again, it gathers dust and eventually disappears. But if you keep pulling that book out, flipping through it, and reshelving it, the librarian takes notice. Ah, the brain thinks, this book must be important. That's exactly how spaced repetition works. By returning to knowledge at intervals, we trick the brain into treating it as valuable. But here's a challenge: every time you recall an old memory, it briefly enters short-term memory again, making it vulnerable to being overwritten. That's why learning a new foreign word can sometimes cause you to forget a similar word you already knew. So here's the question: if even memory itself is so fragile, shouldn't we be more deliberate in how we teach, learn, and recall? Should a teacher just present new material once and move on, or should they reintroduce key ideas at intervals so the knowledge truly sticks? The takeaway is simple yet powerful: if you want to remember, make it meaningful, and revisit it often. Whether you're mastering a new language, preparing for an exam, or learning a life skill, don't rely on cramming. Instead, build a rhythm of spaced repetition, giving your brain the chance to encode the information as lasting knowledge. Just as Cherysshevsky's memory shows us the limits of recall without meaning, Ebbinghaus's research shows us the path forward. Memory isn't about how much we take in, it's about how often we return to what truly matters. Key takeaway 7. Brain rules: why multisensory learning boosts memory and focus. Can you listen to music while studying? If you can, you're not just multitasking, you're tapping into the evolutionary design of your brain. Think about it. Our ancestors didn't live in silent caves, focused on one task at a time. They survived in noisy, unpredictable environments filled with sights, sounds, smells, and touch. Their brains had to process multiple inputs at once to keep them alive. That ancient wiring is still with us today, and it explains why our brains thrive on multisensory learning. Modern science backs this up. In one fascinating experiment, participants watched a silent video of someone speaking. Even though there was no sound, their brains activated the auditory cortex, just as if they were actually hearing the person's voice. Yet when shown a silent video of someone making faces, those same areas stayed quiet. This shows us something profound: our senses are interconnected. Visual input can trigger auditory brain regions, proving that our minds don't work in isolated channels but in integrated networks. Imagine your brain as an orchestra. If only one instrument plays, the music is flat and incomplete. But when multiple instruments play together in harmony, the result is powerful, layered, and unforgettable. Similarly, when you combine sight, sound, and even touch while learning, you're creating a symphony of memory that makes information stick far better than using one sense alone. But wait, doesn't it seem counterintuitive? Shouldn't adding more stimuli overload the brain? Surprisingly, the opposite is true. Cognitive psychologist Richard Meyer demonstrated this in his study. Students who both saw and heard information remembered it far better than those who only saw it or only heard it. This forces us to ask, are we underestimating the brain's true capacity? Instead of shielding it from complexity, should we be challenging it with rich, multisensory experiences that deepen understanding? The lesson is clear: your brain doesn't just handle multisensory input, it thrives on it. So next time you study, don't limit yourself to just reading text. Watch videos, listen to explanations, use visuals, and engage multiple senses. By doing so, you're not overloading your mind, you're unlocking its full potential. Remember, your brain evolved for complexity, and when you give it the right kind of challenge, it rewards you with sharper focus and stronger memory. Key Takeaway 8. Brain Rules: Why Vision Beats All Other Senses in Learning and Memory. Imagine being a world-class wine taster, confident in your ability to distinguish flavors with precision. Now picture being completely fooled, not by your nose or tongue, but by your eyes. That's exactly what happened when researchers dyed white wine red. The experts, relying on vision, insisted they were tasting red wine. Vision had trumped smell. This experiment reveals just how powerful, and sometimes deceptive, our sense of sight truly is. Science consistently shows that vision is the heavyweight champion of the senses. In one remarkable study, participants were shown 2,500 images for just 10 seconds each. Days later, they could recall 90% of them, and even a year later, accuracy remained around 63%. Compare that with listening. When people only hear information, they recall about 10% after 3 days. But when an image is paired with spoken words, recall jumps to 65%. This phenomenon is known as the pictorial superiority effect, first identified over a century ago, and it underscores the dominance of vision in memory and learning. Think of your brain as a filing cabinet. Words alone are like loose sheets of paper, they easily get lost. But when paired with images, those same words are placed in brightly colored folders that are far easier to find later. Vision doesn't just decorate information, it organizes and anchors it, making it almost impossible to forget. But here's the real question: if vision is this powerful, are we underutilizing it in our learning and communication? Too often, we rely on lectures, plain text, or spoken instructions, expecting the brain to retain what it naturally struggles with. What if the real secret to smarter learning, stronger memory, and clearer understanding lies not in more words, but in more pictures? The evidence is undeniable. Our eyes are gateways to stronger memory and sharper learning. So whether you're a teacher, student, or lifelong learner, harness the power of visuals. Use diagrams, charts, and images alongside text. Sketch out concepts, watch explanatory videos, or create mind maps. Remember, when you make learning visual, you don't just make it easier, you make it unforgettable. Because in the hierarchy of senses, vision reigns supreme. What if you could unlock the hidden operating system of your brain, transforming the way you learn, work, and live? In Brain Rules, molecular biologist John Medina takes us on a journey through 12 groundbreaking principles that reveal how our minds truly function. Far from being random, our brains operate with remarkable logic, shaped by evolution, experience, and environment. And when we understand these rules, we gain the power to not only survive, but to thrive. One of Medina's most striking lessons is that our brains are constantly rewiring themselves. Just as Michael Jordan excelled in basketball but failed at baseball because his brain was wired for one sport and not the other, we learn that success depends on building deep expertise over time. Our experiences shape our neural pathways, and with practice and repetition, we can literally reshape the architecture of our minds. Equally fascinating is the brain's multisensory nature. Our ancestors never experienced the world through a single sense, they processed sounds, sights, and smells all at once. Research shows that we, too, learn best when multiple senses are engaged. When you read and hear information together, or pair words with visuals, you're far more likely to remember it. In fact, our brains prefer this kind of heavy lifting. Among the senses, vision stands in a league of its own. Medina illustrates this with powerful studies. When people only listen to information, they recall about 10% after 3 days. But when paired with images, recall skyrockets to 65%. Vision doesn't just support learning, it dominates it. This is why we remember faces, diagrams, and pictures far more vividly than spoken words. The book also reminds us of the brain's vulnerability and resilience. Stress, lack of sleep, and poor environments can cripple cognitive performance. Yet when we nourish our brains with exercise, rest, and positive engagement, their capacity soars. In other words, our brains aren't just biological machines, they are living, dynamic systems deeply influenced by how we treat them. One powerful takeaway is that learning is not uniform. Children's brains develop at different rates, and expecting everyone to learn in the same way, at the same time, is unrealistic. Medina challenges us to rethink education and workplaces, creating systems that honor individuality, nurture curiosity, and recognize that flexibility fuels brilliance. At its core, Brain Rules is a celebration of human potential. It teaches us that we are not bound by fixed abilities. Instead, our brains are adaptable, plastic, and endlessly capable of growth. With the right conditions, practice, rest, curiosity, and visual engagement, we can unlock extraordinary achievements in our careers, relationships, and personal growth. So here's the truth, you have more power within your mind than you've ever imagined. The way you learn, remember, and thrive is not a mystery, it's science, and it's on your side. As you embrace Medina's 12 principles, you'll discover tools to rewire your brain for success in work, school, and life. If this message inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe so together we can spread knowledge that uplifts millions. And if no one told you lately, remember this, you are loved, you are worthy, and you are spectacularly capable of achieving extraordinary goals.